Three, two, one. Yo, welcome back. This is the Babushka Boys podcast. Uh, we are Menelik and Ewell, and today we have a special guest on the show. Ewell's acquaintance, Diego, is on with us today. Thank you for coming on the show, Diego. Ewell,
Of course.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diego. Diego is a student at Yale, and he's an art genius or guru, if you will. And yeah, we're just excited to have
The
him.
gift that keeps giving like babushka. Kush
Just
crushed up in
quick
the
update.
studio, rolling cake
We are
push-up.
coming up on a little bit of a milestone. The cases are approaching 3 million. Not there yet. It's at 2.9. And then looking at the United States, it's at 970,000 total cases. And so it'd be interesting to see how close each of those get. Whether the United States gets to 1 million or the world gets to 3 million. So unfortunately, that's the reality, and we pray for everybody. Hope everybody maintains health. So now let's stop with that. Let's get back to the fun stuff.
Okay, Diego, welcome. We are so excited to have you. So Diego, being yourself, giving the audience just perspective on who you are. Do you want to talk about like your transition from going from Texas to Connecticut and what that was like for you?
Sure. So I feel like a notable point to make is me going to Connecticut was going to college and going to a small liberal arts college that has a very wide range of students from different countries, different backgrounds, different cities all over the US, people that grew up very similarly to myself, very differently. So, I guess the culture shock was more from going from Texas to Yale. Um, and it's interesting because I've always loved the mix, and I've always, especially growing up in a family that is a blend of different cultures, it's always been very exciting to me to in one day maybe travel through um, those different personas almost. Um, at Yale, I definitely feel the highest energy just comes from overall youth, like being around people my age that inspire me. Um, So that's the things that keep you up at night, like, I know you're starting school next year, right? Or
Yeah,
college?
yeah.
We'll both.
We
Both of you. Yeah. So like one of the things you'll notice is, you know, as close as, when you live with your family, you learn a lot of things, about respect and listening and it's your world is the people you come back to, the people you share meals with. But when all those people suddenly become, a higher number of like, let's say 100 people that you'll talk to every day that are all your age, it's interesting because you're all in the same phase of life. So there's almost a seemingly infinite amount of things to talk about because um, you've had different experiences, but your futures may actually intertwine quite a bit. So, I definitely feel in that transition it's just a different type of social interaction. It's perhaps more exciting, less comforting. You're definitely pushed out of your comfort zone more, but in that process, your learning just goes through the roof and you get to know people so quickly and you pick up on things so much faster and they always say like you learn more about who you are, but it's not necessarily acquiring more knowledge, but you're also reflecting on your past as well. So that's kind of a big take on the last 2 years of my life. I'm halfway through my sophomore year, but it's really been about that, about connecting with people my age and being inspired by them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. It seems like for a lot of people, college is that time, they can discover themselves, but also get to know, a bunch of new people, get to know what kind of environments they may want to transition into, what aspects they want to keep, and things that they might not like, in terms of what they've learned in college thus far. So yeah, definitely interesting, on your take. And yeah, I'm kind of curious, what would you say that you've kind of brought to the college community, with their respective school? Like, what have you brought as a contribution to, like, being amongst your peers and things like that? Like, what kind of diverse, mindset or, background or things like that?
Right. One of the things that has kind of been irresistible, and in the most genuine way, I feel I have brought a lot of eagerness and collaboration when it comes to doing creative work. I I went to a big high school, but I met the first artists, like true like artists that were my age when I went to college. It I definitely felt that I was kind of an outsider, um, being an artist. None of my friends were on my sports teams. In the classroom, all my things were more STEM heavy, so that made sense. But you know, the environment in which I was surrounded by musicians, by dancers, by filmmakers, by people who were excellent writers, people who had these crazy tastes in all sorts of creative mediums. It just kind of created this mindset for me that I've been kind of um, trying to spread, to the people around me, that let's work on something together. Like, you know how to do this, I know how to do this. Like, let's put that together and see what happens. So in terms of that, I feel like, especially being in a place that you're always together, and you always have the resources, that there's recording studios, art studios, dance studios. There's no excuse to be doing something every weekend that is making and collaborating. So that's definitely one mindset, I'd bring.
And I know you touched on this a little bit, before, but can you just talk to us about, your background specifically? Because I know you're a very unique person.
I mean, by background, as in, like, growing up ethnically.
No, yeah,
Or
ethnically. Sorry. Yeah.
We'll start off with that.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, I like I said before, the beauty's in the mix. Like, my dad's from Spain, from España, from Madrid, and mi mamá Puertorriqueña. So I grew up with a very strong presence of both those cultures, which I'm very grateful for. I live most of my summers in Spain, where all my dad's family is, and Puerto Rico. I We'd go there, most years, but most of my family, mis tios, mi abuela, everyone moved here to Austin. So there's been a very strong Puerto Rican presence in my life, all throughout, as well as Spanish. But then I grew up in Texas. I feel comfortable saying that I am also a Texan. So, um, sorry, there's a wasp following me around. I'm outside. Speaking of Texas, lots of yellow jackets. But yeah, it was one of those things that, and one thing that I'm grateful for, is that I never doubted who I was, um, and it never seemed atypical to be such a kind of strange mix, uh, because when like I said before, like, the people that I'd eat dinner with every night were the same as me, and we speak Spanglish, right? So it's, my especially my sister and I, we oscillate from speaking Spanish to English, and then depending on who we're talking to, our Spanish may lean to a more Puerto Rican Spanish to more Spanish from Spain. So in terms of that, that's something that I've carried with me is that you know if you're half, I feel like you can always round up. Like if I'm half Spanish, I feel proud saying that I'm Spanish because I've like maintained that culture within me, and like I know what a Spanish life is, and same as Puerto Rican. Most of the people I love are Puerto Rican. When I come up, those are the people I'm bringing with me. So, um,
Yeah.
so
Shout out
yeah,
Puerto Rico
that's
and Spain.
yeah, I know bad bunny. um, yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, and I don't
No.
know I don't know if you see anything like that or disagree with any of that, but I guess I don't really care because like that's just how I feel. So
I love that mindset. No, I think me and Menelik can both relate to you
For
because
sure.
I especially Menelik because you can talk about it, Menelik. I'm not
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I kind of come from this like a similar upbringing as Diego, not like culturally, but from both my parents were both non-Americans. So like my mom's Ethiopian, my
Mhm.
dad's Canadian. So I definitely get what you're saying with definitely like appreciating and knowing who you are and what what your the great things about your family and embracing that part of your culture and things like that. So yeah, definitely vibe with that.
And I love how you said if you're half of something, you can always round up. Because I don't know if it's just me, but like growing up, I always questioned like who I really was. Because I'm Ethiopian, so I can't. But I'm also American, so I can't also fit in with like all the pure Ethiopians. But I'm American, but like I'm not actually American, so I can't fit in with them. And like you just have like this conversation in your head where you're like, where do I belong? Who am I with? And you're just like, I
Right,
know
you
who I'm
get
with.
you get self-conscious,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and
But
that makes perfect sense. Like, I'd go to summer camp in Spain, and I didn't speak the 100% perfect Spanish like from Madrid. I had a little bit of a Puerto Rican accent, and people would be like, "Where are you from? Like, you're not from here." And even if you, and maybe they'd notice that halfway through the camp, like, day 6, day 7, and you realize that even though they're noticing that, you're still at 99%. You're still at that point that one thing that's incredible about human beings is like being able to notice subtleties and differences and through comparisons and stuff.
mhm.
But in your case, you are more Ethiopian than 99.99999% of Americans. Like it's
Yeah,
that so it comes down to I think like the extra half, like what I was saying with rounding up, is like how much effort you put into learning about and exploring your culture, right?
yeah, exactly.
Like what's your experience been with that?
I mean, until I don't know how it was for middle, like, but until like high school, I really didn't have an interest or want to explore. So my parents kind of just like pushed me into that culture, but I never had like an actual interest in exploring it. So when I went to Ethiopia the first time that I could remember, at least, I was like invested in like learning about more about the culture, where I'm from, the people. And yeah, I think it's really like how much effort and time you put into learning more about the culture that you're part of or that you were born into. And that makes up like a huge part of your identity.
Bro, Ewell's definitely like on the front hand of like understanding Ethiopian culture and embracing that. Like around me and around his cousins and everything, he's always definitely pushing that. So yeah, definitely I see how he's coming up with that. And then I think so like personally, I kind of initially wasn't um you know too into my Ethiopian culture. I kind of like grew around it, but grew up around it. But it's like things like my name, um, like my name Menelik. It's supposed to be a notable name in Ethiopia. It's named after an emperor's name, for example. So like, if I'm in Ethiopia, it's it's pretty impressive to have that kind of a name. But like growing up here in America, I was like really used to people either mispronouncing it or making little jokes about it, like, oh, men I lick and things like that. And so just like when I was younger, when I was younger, I kind of like wish I had like a more American normal name, and things like that. But like over time, it's like almost like my superpower or something. It's like I kind of hold it like as a shield type of thing. And like,
Preach.
I actually really appreciate things like that. And almost like I almost feel sorry for people who haven't been able to accept or like fully understand like the beauty of their culture. Wherever they're from. And I kind of like hope that people actually have the opportunity and like really appreciate that. Because I think it's really, really awesome for people to do that. So that's a little spiel.
Yeah,
and we're still young, right? Like you still have a lifetime of coming to and learning about that. Like, but I definitely feel, especially once you leave the wherever you grew up, and like it's part of what you'll take with you onto your kind of next stage in life in college. I think you know I would bet that it's going to become even more um, apparent or of interest to both of you. But just because like I feel like people are more sensitive to not make fun of your name because it's different, because you're not named Sam or Jack. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but like you're gonna have a different, people are gonna receive it differently,
Yeah.
So yeah, something like to look forward to and also watch out. But pretty cool.
For sure. Understanding your own culture it's a beautiful thing.
Wait,
Yeah.
Diego, I'm kind of curious. Like, what are like the differences between Puerto Rican and like España Spanish?
Oh, let's see. There's a whole well, I'm gonna just do it, but el español de España es más rígido y se habla con la Z y de Madrid. Joder, una cerveza en la plaza, por favor. Right? These are all obviously like stereotypes. It
Yeah.
sounds very like, I would compare it to like, as you get further from Spain, even within Spain, even from Madrid, it like loosens up
Okay.
because en Puerto Rico la gente es dite apartamento, no dicen la R, tostones, hay una pronunciación diferente. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously someone's gonna listen to this and be like, "What the fuck is he saying?" Like, but it's kind of like you come to terms with it in your own way. Like it's all about observation, right? So like the more you can kind of notice those like subtle like differences, the more you can appreciate them. I definitely like, even just like music, like I was just on a run earlier and like my whole playlist was Puerto Rican music, and like even there I like pick up a lot of like words I didn't know, and because like that's something too. It's not just an accent. It's like it's a completely different dialect. There's different, especially slang. Like there's just like different ways of saying things. So,
Yeah. For sure. And how was your run? How did that go?
Good. I'm happy to be back, and I feel in the best shape I've been in a while. The quarantine's really,
It's
a
treating
little
you well.
extra time. Yeah. It feels good. Feel lucky to feel healthy.
Wait, so how are you taking the quarantine? Are you like, do you actually kind of appreciate the maybe slower paced, taking a break kind of idea, or? 'Cause
Yeah.
I know
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I love being home, and I have more time to think and feel like myself again. I feel like when we're trying to keep up with deadlines and kind of the rigor of student life, working, also wanting to like socialize, and like I said, like it's an exciting part to like get to know people in college, but you also have like one of the heaviest workloads you'll have in your whole life, and you don't sleep much and you don't take care of yourself much. So it's been nice to have the stability of like, look, I'm not going anywhere today or the next day or the next day or the next day. I'm gonna just be here. I gotta like make my routines, learn new recipes, work on some art. Austin's a really nice city to be in because the sun's out, and I can do work outside. Um, so yeah, it's been nice.
That's amazing. And I know in your free time you've been like playing around with like the pool that you have at home, and you made this like really cool illusion thing with like the mirrors and the reflection of the pool light.
Yeah, exactly. I've been trying to capture sunlight to try to at least further understand how these materials, such as water, are constructed and how they work and move. There's these things called rippling caustics. It's like when you look underwater at like the ocean floor or whatever, like you see those like hexagonal patterns that kind of moving throughout. They're so constant that you sometimes don't notice them. But there's this at 10:15 in the morning, the sun hits just right, and yeah, I've been really, really interested in that. I'm trying now. I realize that if you put a mirror under the water and then reflect it back, it makes a rainbow. So
Oh,
I'm pushing myself. I got to finish my papers by May 1st, but I'm gonna try to build a 20-foot mirror and reflect back a like life-size rainbow. Um,
oh
Jeez.
my God.
so
I love
yeah,
it.
I'm just like dreaming of like being able to swim through a rainbow, and I think I know now how to make that possible.
So,
That's
what was
amazing.
the idea behind creating, I guess, the rainbow? Like, what you just like wanted to see to be able to like manipulate it? I guess is that
Well, it was yeah. Well, it was like it was actually an accident the first time. So like I've been just like imagine that I've been taking sunlight and reflecting it into the water, and then when it reflects out, it is manipulated by the pattern on the water, so it creates shapes. So what I did in that time is that I got one of the mirrors and held it up so that the sun was still reflecting on it, but then the mirror was underwater. And then, you know, what happens when it comes out is like mega refraction, and then it just splits all the light particles into the colors, and it's like this vibrant rainbow. Like it's not like one of the like hazy rainbows you see in the sky or something. It's like every color you can imagine is just vividly being projected right on the wall in front of you. And this was just with a tiny mirror, probably like the size of your hand. But I'm trying to like design like a structure that could fit inside the pool so that it's like a 4 by 20 mirror, and just actually make the entire like wall just that giant rainbow. So that's where we're
Wow.
at right now. That's one of the projects in the works. If I was on FaceTime, I could show you all the sketches. But you can
So
picture it.
you plan it out before, and is it like more of an architectural design that you do for these mirrors? Like what is your thought process when you start making these?
Yeah. I mean, especially from an architecture perspective, my father is an architect, so I've been asking him like the what ways to kind of go about designing this, because like I want to make something adjustable since the sun moves. I want to be able to not have it be just like one time that it works, but that it can be like adjusted so that it can follow the sun a little bit, because like the angles are very temporary, right? So there's only one instance in which it's hitting perfectly, and maybe that's the beauty of it. I wouldn't be mad if that were the case. If at 5:15 in the evening specifically is when like the rainbow appears. But Yeah, there's a lot to think about. And like, this is one of those things that more than an art piece, I'm just seeing it as an experiment or a fascination. It's incredible that we live in a place where these things are possible. It's like magic. Like you can create every color in the universe by just holding a mirror to the sun. It's like no paint, no ordering anything on Amazon or um, you know, collecting things, or it's everything that could happen, like everything that exists, all the colors there, like in one. I just think that's so fascinating.
Wait, real quick, that's sick. So you were talking about a little bit like how you're looking at like light and refraction, and the way I guess the colors are projected, through the ways you're moving the mirrors and lights. And this is this is one thing I saw. I think I might have seen it on TikTok or something. Of I think they made the room really dark, and then they cut like a circle close to the window.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you know about that? And then I think then the light, was focused with that hole, and then it pretty much projects what's outside, but on the inside of the room. Do you got like? Have you?
Yeah. I think I've seen that. I mean, it's basically like creating a giant old-fashioned camera that you're inside of, which is awesome. I mean, that's how the first cameras came to work. Like it was like a dark box with. Have you heard of a pinhole camera? It's a
Yeah.
dark, like closed off box, except for this tiny little like pinhole in the front, and then you put the film in the back, and then it exposes like the light, but in the exact like order that like the light is hitting that hole. So yeah, it's super
Okay.
cool. It's like that's exactly what it is, and I've been wanting to try that because it works pretty well from what I saw in that video. But yeah, that's like the start, right? Like that's how all at least film cameras work on a very rudimentary level.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. A lot of these things that the finished product looks really intricate and like crazy. Like sometimes they just like have like the most simple, like basic beginnings, and the concepts. It's just like it's just how physics and nature works.
Right. Exactly. Like, I think in part being able to capture and manipulate light has been one of the most incredible um, feats of technology, just because it's been mainly through observation. But everything you see is just reflection of light. Without it, you wouldn't see a thing. So,
That's deep.
yeah. But it's deep on the fucking like neuroscientific level too. Like I've been taking this class called computational basis of seeing and thinking, and I mean the human eye is one of the most amazing things. The ability to do so many different things at once and register that information to not just be something but to mean something. Whew.
Yeah, it's
I could
incredible.
go on and on about that, but
Backtracking a little bit. So, in high school, how did you, or whenever you really started crafting your passion into art, how were you able to like really express yourself?
I guess, you know, I didn't really start seeing it as art until I started considering myself an artist. But
And when was that?
I would say my senior year, when I kind of put together all the things that I'd done just for like a college application, or it was the first time I'd seen all my work together. Um, then I realized like I should keep pursuing this, like, taking this seriously, because, up till that point, like I've been I've been on this since like I was as long as I can remember, before I could read or write. drawing was everything to me. But I've been drawing since I was very, very young, but it's always just been something I did. Like, it's something I did for fun. I never played video games. I really just directly translated my imagination onto paper constantly. I even with me right now, I have a sketchbook. I always have my sketchbook with me. I'm always drawing whatever's in my mind, um, and putting it on paper. But in terms of expressing myself as an artist, I think that's when you start to identify yourself as that and put work out there into the world with that identity in mind, if that makes sense. Because like most of the time, art and drawing was just for me. It was for me to for documentation of like things I would see or things that I think or trying to understand. Like I never would take notes with words. I'd always just like draw pictures and on like big posters and stuff for my classes and whatnot. But I think the kind of start was that time where you have to like really look back on what you've done and send it out. I think also when I started working on or doing stroll designs, that was clothing brand that I just started my senior year. That was the first time that I wasn't just making drawings, but I was putting them out there, as in like I was getting them screen printed on T-shirts and people were wearing them and I was wearing them. And that was the first time that you know things actually went out there in more of a formal way, if that makes sense.
And how did you start Stro Designs? Like, was it always like these? I know you have like very unique pictures, especially like on the stroll shirts, and I have one actually. Thank you so much for that, by the way. That was I
Yeah, of
love that
course.
shirt. I always wear it. But you have like these faces, and then you have like the person that strolls. Like, how did you come up with those caricatures? Character. I can't speak English.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm realizing now that I didn't necessarily or directly answer your question before, but like I think expression is a kind of a confusing word to me because, I definitely see it more as um translation almost. Like making a drawing is just showing how I see the world. So the stroll was a drawing that I made, like the little logo was a drawing that I quickly made of someone walking by. I I think in Vancouver, and it was just like a quick, like seamless drawing. Like this is like as quickly as I can capture this moment and remember it forever. This is what I'm representing, and then kind of like that, I realized that it doesn't take too much to capture a presence or a person or a persona. So this style kind of generated that it was very contour based, very unicursal lines, very the expression was in the movement more than the uh, literal expression of the face. If and that that style translated very well to screen printing, which you need some sort of uniformity in color and in line work. So that kind of started from there, that I realized that these drawings looked good on shirts and on hoodies, and um you know what helped me take it to the next step was my sister Daniela. Shout out to Daniela.
Shout out,
She is
Dan.
Shout out to Danny. She is kind of like my teammate here and like all throughout the things we do, but she has the strong suits that I lack, which are like organization, determination for execution, building a website, being consistent with what you do. Like she's been the perfect teammate for this because we we kind of like when we put our minds together, it's just a mega mind, and we just started looking up how can we do this, and then when we come into another problem we're going to do that, and we've always been very interested in working locally, so We're good friends now with the screen printers here in Austin. We've always printed our stuff through them. And especially in terms of like sales too, Danny's like on top of all that. She builds all the websites, all the transactions, everything goes through her. So like for me, it's a sweet deal because all I really have to do is, you know, make the art and, you know, make sure it gets printed the way I want.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then, I mean, from there, like the story was like, you know, that's in retrospect now that we've been like selling like, you know, a lot of, you know, things over the years, over the past now 2.5 years or so. But from the start, it was as genuine as it can be. I made 24 t-shirts and just gave them to all my friends. And then they started wearing them, and people would ask like, "Yo, where'd you get that?" And then, "Oh yeah, my friend Diego made it," or, you know, Stroll Designs, check it out, or whatever. And then, you know, as demand increased, I just kept meeting demand, and it's just kind of gone up from there.
So
And
is it like a full-fledged business now?
I mean, I would say that since I've gone to school, I've made it more manageable in that I want it to be seen less as like a brand trying to like push profits, but more like a fabrication of clothes that's unique and that people will be like happy and proud to wear it. That's why I'm trying to, especially now. I mean, the intention is that it's art on clothing.
yeah.
This isn't just like one logo that I'm gonna keep pushing in your face, like Adidas or, you know, Nike or what, all these like, especially like these streetwear brands that, you know, it's all about the brand and the value of the brand rather than like the integrity of the art. And you know, there's people that obviously make that exception, but those people are, you know, also are getting now like the recognition that I think they deserve, and that, you know, at the end of the day, you just my whole mission with this is just to bring things into the existence that I would like to wear, clothes that I think is cool, because other things weren't like meeting those standards of like what I was imagining would be like a cool thing to wear. So yeah, I think, you know, now it's less of a business that we live off of, and it's more of a seasonal thing. Like I'll make a couple designs and then launch it kind of like as a collection. But what keeps me doing it is like the people that like doing it. I mean that like wearing it and like buying it. Papá, estoy en una llamada ahora, por favor.
And I
Sorry.
think that's
I mean, you know, we have this like whole quarantine, everyone is in the house situation.
yeah. But I think that's why you're at least for me, that's why like why Stroll was so attractive, because it wasn't like your typical clothing brand that, you know, people just make. It was more of like an expression or just a like real art that you could wear. And I haven't seen anything like that before. So I was starstruck when I first saw the designs and everything.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Of course. And wait, what was the website that people could get this on?
Strolldesigns.com.
There we go.
Or that's all linked from my Instagram too, Go Miro. But yeah, at Stroll Designs, STROLL Designs.
Nobody has clothes like this. That's why like it's so unique. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
But
check it out. Show some love.
yeah, we'll link it in
Yeah.
the description so people can click on it. When you were growing up, or even now in college, are there any artists, teachers, or just like people that you looked up to artistically, or even just as inspirationally?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with, my mom was just an art history encyclopedia, and she has always been referring me to different artists and taking me to museums and just showing me how big the world is out there. And that I think has been a huge part in my drive to keep learning and keep kind of developing my craft, because you know there's always there are people that you see their work and it's just so outstanding and consistent, and um so many different layers. I mean, and I've seen them at different ages in my life. Like, one of my favorite paintings is Guernica by Picasso, and that was really close to our apartment in Madrid. That I would, walk there with my mom as a kid and just sit down in front of it for hours and just stare at it and try to draw it in my sketchbook. And then every year I'd come back and, you know, my the evolution of how I would see it would change, and then I would understand its meaning more. I would notice the materials, the scale, and that that experience of understanding that there have been so many incredible people that have come before me has really just fed to this desire to like keep getting inspired by every artist that I see. The um I mean, in terms of people directly in my life, I didn't take any art classes in high school. My art teachers now at Yale are great and they are very inspiring, but the people that I feel like the most impacted by were definitely my parents, just for the exposure to the art world as a whole. People who really love appreciating and learning about different artists and the work they do.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
So I'm looking at the painting right now, and
Yeah, so am I.
before before we recorded this, I was kind of looking at your other works that you have on your Instagram, and I was like kind of asking you. Well, I was like, I'm trying to see like if he's kind of inspired by certain painters, and we were throwing out some names, and I was like maybe Pablo Picasso, a little bit of that, and like
Of course.
I think so. I think I'm not really. I wouldn't say I'm like an artist or anything, but in talking and seeing different artists go through a progression, in terms of their work, I've seen a lot of people. They start out with kind of impersonating, not impersonating, but getting inspired by
Replicating.
different artists,
Yeah.
and then trying to emulate the things that they appreciate in those pieces of art, and then I think there comes a point where you almost make your own, like you make your own name, have your own concept, and then that becomes like your trademark, and you kind of carry that with you throughout like the rest of your career. So I'm wondering, like, where would you be right now? Would you say that you have your own kind of style now? Are you still following in the footsteps of other great artists? Like, where is that right now?
Um, I very much consider myself a student still. I'm very humbled by the fact that I have so much to learn still, and that it may be from other artists, that may be from just spending more hours in the studio. Um, I am aware that a somewhat recognizable style has been developed, but I also don't like confining myself to it, just because I feel like when you stop learning, you die, and you it's very easy to just get comfortable with something and keep making that. And you see those like art Instagrams that it's like, you know, it's very popular now to like, once you get something that you is cool and like just like keep running with it, and like, you know, I respect that, but it's not for me. Like, I don't want to be making the same thing all the time. Just because the adventure for me is in the unknown. Like, I like experiencing being halfway through a work and not knowing how it's going to end, because it kind of leaves your mind in the most creative place it can be, which is a sort of improvisation and determination to finish and explore and develop your skills in something that you don't know. So I feel like right now the where I'm at is learning from everyone and everywhere and everything that I do, and really taking close note. I've been especially keen to be documenting everything I do, because I know I'm not making my best work right now that I'll ever make. I hope not, but I want to be able to at least reflect and look back through what I've done and say, you know, this is where I've started picking this up, and this is when I started developing that. So, yeah.
Wow. When you stop learning, you die. That's an amazing quote. I love that. And I think you're completely right. When you start like micro organizing or just planning things out too rigorously, you can really saturate your own creativity. And like before we started
Exactly.
this podcast, I even asked you if you wanted to like plan it out, and you were like, "No, I'm more like impromptu." And I love that. That's amazing. Like, I mean, I feel like more people should definitely hop on that wave.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's fun. All it requires is like the enough confidence to get through that point of discomfort. Um, because like you knowing that you will make it. Like, I know you run a lot. This is something that running coaches have always told me. I'm assuming they've told you a similar thing, but there will come a point in a race or in a run that you will feel so uncomfortable and that you will want to stop.
Mhm.
But that is the moment where you are getting better and exerting yourself to a point that, maybe the next time you get there, that point will be half a mile further ahead. Or, you know, the the important part is knowing that you still, even if you feel that discomfort, you can still finish. So I guess it's a kind of a similar mentality to that. But
Yeah.
I don't know what your take is on that.
Pushing your
No.
boundaries, people. Let's go.
Exactly. I mean, you're completely right. And earlier you were talking about how you were learning so much while being uncomfortable for like the first time when you were at Yale. So, I mean, is it safe to assume that you grow or learn and develop more when you are uncomfortable?
I mean, I think that's precisely what learning is. It takes effort for your brain to register something unfamiliar. It takes effort for you to motivate yourself to continue even when you don't know when it's going to end. It takes effort to read a sentence over and over again, even if you don't understand it, and look up this word. And then if you have to look up every word in the sentence, it takes effort, but you've learned it. That, if you're doing something that you already know how to do, you're not learning, right?
Yeah. I know. I know. At least I wanted to get into this. And Milik was listening to a podcast about this before. Um, there's this theory that we are living in a simulation. What are your thoughts on that
All right, I'm gonna give a little backstory on this so I don't sound like an absolute lunatic. But along with studying art, I'm also a cognitive science major at Yale, which means that I take a lot of classes in, you know, neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and things like that.
Wait, so
So,
who's your favorite philosopher?
I don't know.
Top
I
three. Top three.
I mean, I read a lot of Descartes and Kant and Nietzsche last semester.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that resonated with me there, but I wouldn't say that I've read like an entire philosopher's body of work to enough to say that I have confidence to say like they're like my favorite or that I agree with them, because like the whole thing with philosophy is like it's also nuanced. I really like found it fun to kind of challenge what the things they've said, or at least explain it through um um neuroscience. Like there's this philosopher. Actually, he would probably be on my top three, but his name is like Robert Vischer, and
Mhm.
he was contemplating this theory of, it's a German word. Maybe you can help me out here, but it was a Euphalung or something like that.
You feel it?
But
What does
it,
it translate to?
it's spatial empathy. So
Uh, yeah.
it's it's um it's one of the things that kind of like launched me into this. But how do we project ourselves in space? So I don't know wherever you guys are right now, but your body is well aware of how you're positioned and where you are in that room or outside or wherever. That is and also being able to understand how other people are perceiving and inhabiting spaces. So kind of going off those readings, I was super interested in that because, this guy in 18 whatever was contemplating something that just now we're starting to understand why it's so important. And the main reason is that we are now developing technology that allows us to like transport to completely different spaces and inhabit them in different ways, just because we've understood our perceptual system to the point that we can do that effectively. So like virtual reality, have you guys tried doing putting on virtual reality goggles and things like that?
I love virtual reality.
Yeah.
So it's amazing because suddenly the reason it's so effective is because it's convincing your brain of most of the things that are a checklist of reality. Like, you know objects are in 3 dimensions. When I turn my head, the space like stays maintained. There's object permanence, there's depth. All these things are the little checkpoints of telling your brain, this is reality, this is reality, this is reality, right? So um, kind of going back to this theory, and this is something that I don't know if I believe it fully, but it's definitely something important to consider. Artificial intelligence isn't getting any dumber. It's actually on an exponential curve that is just going to shoot through the roof, and it's like already doing that. Once neuroscience, virtual reality, or 3D rendering and artificial intelligence are seamlessly integrated, there may come a point that we have no way of distinguishing what is real and what is code. And that's what this whole um what this
We are.
whole theory is all about, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no way of knowing if we are just a simulation that's been programmed by a previous human civilization or form of life. That All right, what were you saying?
Oh, okay. So before we got on, I was like skimming through this paper by Nick Bostrom, who's a philosopher at Oxford, and he wrote like this. Hold on, it's 14 pages about how there's no way to possibly prove that we are not in a simulation, and that there's a higher chance that we are living in a simulation right now than there than we are not. Like we are the first, like this is the first time we are going through this stage of life.
So which one would you bet on? Which one would you bet that we are or we aren't? That like this is a simulation, or would you bet that this isn't a simulation?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, or I guess both of you. But
I personally think, I mean, again, it's like one of those things where it's kind of like a God complex, like you can't 100% be certain that, God is real, or you can't 100% be certain that God is not real. It's just one of those things where it's just like, maybe it's a social construct, maybe it's real, like who knows? But, and I mean, I personally believe there's a high chance that we are living in a simulation, and we have already reached a level where we can simulate reality to the point like what Diego was talking about, how we can't distinguish like what is code and what is reality. I feel like we've already got there, and this is just like we are lab rats. I feel like there was a movie with Jim Carrey that was exactly this.
The Truman Show, right?
The Truman Show, yeah.
just
So in a way, we're all Truman.
so like okay, just to clarify, is there a difference between simulation theory, and then the theory that we like aren't the only beings in this universe? Are those two different topics of discussion?
From what I've read, I think they kind of go hand in hand in
Okay.
the sense that we have some sort of creator. Like if we are a simulation, someone made us.
Yeah.
So I guess the real question is like, how does it manifest itself? Is it some wizard in the sky? Is it someone that's amongst us right now? Is it someone that's been among us? Like, I don't know. I think it's interesting to dabble into the who it could be, but I also feel like if if it were something or someone that created us, we would only learn about them if they wanted us to. So
Yeah.
it's maybe not an effective use of our time to necessarily pursue that, rather than like continuing pushing technology forward and see what happens.
And getting
Um,
Yeah, I mean that's like that's one way to look at it for sure. That if we are if another being is trying to communicate with us, that they just either haven't done it yet. But I think there's also the other aspect as to us, maybe they are communicating, but we just don't have the ability to actually pick up on what they're communicating. Maybe it's like some
right.
encoded language, or it's one of those.
Or reflections of pool water.
Yo.
Exactly.
Oh shoot, where was going? Oh yeah,
But
I'm gonna read this paper.
Yeah,
I
the
think
Nick Bostroms paper, yeah, it's interesting.
there's okay. I don't think it talks about it, but like there's things I've heard about, regarding different. I know we're getting a little bit, really science, like philosophical science, but like there's different dimensions. So that 2-dimension, 3 dimensions, and I guess, we kind of live our world in 3 dimensions, right? And essentially, if there is a 4th dimension, our right now we don't really have the capacity to understand that and manipulate and use it to our abilities. And I feel like maybe there's the other being is in control or aware of a fourth dimension. And now I kind of sound like I'm on acid or something, but
no, yeah. I mean, it makes sense
No,
to be
yeah.
like perplexed by something that we could or could not be able to even perceive. Like, I think that's part of the reason I'm so interested in the human perceptive system, is because that is the first step in understanding the world, is how you get that like raw data, how you get that raw input and do something with it. So, I think a change in seeing, if there were a different dimension and we were to see it, it would come from some sort of technical advancement that allows us to incorporate a new sense in our perceptive system. Maybe. But
yeah.
I feel like in terms of, the power that technology, especially artificial intelligence, is offering, that seems to be at least now like a promising avenue.
For sure.
My bad. Go ahead. Go.
Okay, I think we should speak about this in like full context. Even if we are living in a simulation, I don't think that should change in any way of like how we behave or react to the world. Because
Totally.
like if we really are living in a simulation and none of our lives really matter, like there's nothing we could possibly do about it. We just have to, go on to our day. And I'm not saying like, oh, let there be anarchy or anything, but like we already live in this world where there's preconceived notions of absolutely everything. So I mean, there's not much we can really change. It's just being able to recognize the situation that we're in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I feel like, we were talking about philosophers earlier. A lot of people that think too far into this definitely like lose it to some point. Like my boy
Yeah.
Nietzsche. My boy Nietzsche lost his marbles, But
Wait, how far did he go off the rails?
did he commit suicide?
Oh no way!
I don't think
No,
he
wait.
did.
Let me look it up. Let me look it up.
Yeah, we need a fact check.
But it's funny that you say that because I'm a huge Nietzsche fan. I mean, besides the whole nihilism thing, just some of his concepts are pretty enticing.
Diego, are you studying like AI?
No, he got a pneumonia. He got a pneumonia. No, that's suicide.
That's what it
That's
was.
different. That's different.
Very different. But he was 55 though.
Yeah. And I mean, the weird thing about Nietzsche was he always talked about how meaningless some things in life are, but he was broke. He never married the girl that he wanted to marry. So I think he came from this very pessimistic view of life almost. But again, he had some really interesting.
Yeah. He had dementia, syphilis. The
Sheesh.
works.
That's the whammy.